war and famine with a little bit of rape and pillage. Whatever happened to Texas?
Well, just as a kid, it's just simple things like teasing, you know? Like, you don't want to be teased, so you don't want to tease somebody either, you know? Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's pretty simple, but I think media kind of complicates it more too, though, you know, and kind of starts like rallying up different perspectives, and you know, there's no space for equal unity, you know? Either you pick one side or the other, but there should be like open unity, you know? It's more space for that, you know? And it's I think it's pretty obvious, you know, if you see two babies, you see a black baby, a white baby, no matter what color, race the baby is, it's not gonna think like that. It's just gonna do whatever, you know, they're gonna do the same thing. They'll maybe smack each other, maybe like roll on each, I don't know what, you know, like babies just play with each other regardless, you know, until they grow up and learn all these new things, you know, and it becomes like a natural way of this society, but it's just a matter of, you know, realizing it's not okay, you know.
They keep telling me about how it's a shame that black parents have to have the conversation with our children. How we have to explain if a cop stops you, don't reach for the glove compartment, don't talk back. The conversation. Well, we've had the conversation for decades. It's time we have a conversation with America. We need to have a conversation about your racism, about your bigotry, about your hate, about how you would put your knee on our neck while we cry for our lives. We need a new conversation.
Do you think they were
To
thinking
get
about
attention.
it? You think they did it to get attention?
Yeah.
No, I feel
Go
like
ahead, Jordan. That's just good. Go ahead, Jordan.
I feel like he's a kid, so he's probably just like playing around. He was probably born in class, so
Yeah, he
Yeah,
probably
all I-
had a toy right there.
I mean,
Wanted to play.
like if it was me and DJ like in the same room like during school, like I probably wouldn't be paying attention either. So like,
Okay. So let's hop on to the next one.
Expelled.
Expelled from school. They're done. They can't come back, right?
To any schools?
no,
Usually for that school district. It
I
depends.
mean, but like if they would take it for how they did for Horacio, he wouldn't be back at no APS.
No, that was a real gun.
Yeah.
That
So,
was
yeah,
yeah.
but like if they
actual
did that
gun
like
loaded.
that,
Yeah, so you get expelled, you can't just go back to that school.
yeah, I mean, if it
Horacio
was
he
like,
had a real gun and he wasn't allowed to go back to APS schools. Yeah,
Yeah.
he could only go to charter schools. And that's
Okay.
only if they wanted him.
Yeah.
I think what's more important to me is that our students, when I say our students, particularly African American students, aren't getting suspended at disproportionate rates, right? So I think the curriculum is important, but again, creating spaces like Visions and Kofa for these young men to really come together to really bond and be who they are, right? Giving them the tools to learn how to, what's the word I'm looking for? Conflict. Which conflict am I looking for? Interpersonal conflict, right? How do we do that, right? How do we talk to each other in a respectful way besides picking up guns, right? So, I want them to be able to express themselves, right? Because there's so many emotions that these young men and women. There's so many emotions that's going on right now, right? For them to just recognize these emotions and really build from them, right? Not in a self-destructive way, but to be in a good way. I hope that makes sense.
It was a program that we created
So if you were the principal, what would you have?
around about 6 months ago, where we realized that our young black boys needed a venue where they could actually express themselves and not feel intimidated,
By cameras.
you know, or by someone who didn't quite understand how they felt. You know, as an adult, I find it hard sometimes to discuss some of the things that's going on in our society today. I find it real hard. Breonna Taylor was in her bed, in her house.
To help me change the narrative. I want you to start making those posts. I want you to think about what you can do each and every day to tackle systemic racism. One thing every day. When you see something, say something.
The thing about systemic racism is that it's inbred into every fiber of what makes America America. And so we have to walk it back and dismantle that from the top down. Systemic racism it's like the little nuances that you see but no one does anything about. It happens in the medical community. We don't get the same medical treatment. Black women aren't taken as serious as a white patient. Black men aren't taken as serious as a white patient. That's part of systemic racism. In schools, how our black children are viewed as a disciplinary problem quicker than white children. That's an issue. In the job market, when you're sitting on a job panel and the black candidate could be more qualified, but the white person gets it, that's systemic racism. And that's what I'm saying when I say systemic racism is integrated in America, in every fiber of America. And so what we have to do is reteach ourselves and relearn what it's like to basically be a human race that's not built on racism. This country was founded on racism. This country was built on the backs of slaves. And what we have to do is dismantle that from the top down. My son, he was going to go for a run. My son should be able to go for a run at 6 o'clock. But when he was getting ready to go for a run, I was like, I'll go with you.
Yeah, come get some more.
Because I'm concerned about him being in his own neighborhood and being targeted because he's 6'5" and 16.
The issue of racism is a complex issue. It's been called New Mexico's, the United States' real original sin. As far as the Catholic Church goes, racism is considered a serious sin, a grave sin against God's love. The issue of racism is just really important for us to examine collectively and individually. Racism can be overt, as we're experiencing in these days in our country, and it could also be very, very subtle. You know, I remember my parents growing in their appreciation of others, and even myself growing in my life. The human stories help us to come to an understanding of each other's journeys, and then hopefully have regard, have respect for each person's journey.
George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd!
Members of our community just get stepped on. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's time to raise the visibility. We're in an era, excuse me, can I just take this off? We're in an era where anymore, why not make things visible? You know what I mean? Like, nobody gets to decide what goes viral, right? So in a sense, there's been police brutality since the beginning of time. Like, since the police have ever come around, like police and like KRS-One. Have you ever heard KRS-One? Overseer, officer. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. We don't want overseers anymore. We don't want people to think that it's okay to shoot members of our community, ever.
I think a huge part of our work, even though it's immigration work, has been approached it with a racial lens, with a critical racial lens. And that means that we need to understand that a lot of the root causes that are that are creating now discrimination against immigrants, deportations, incarceration of immigrants, come from the same root causes that are creating the violence we're seeing against Black people, and it's how race has been used in America as a social construct to keep power, to build power and to maintain power for a few. I think that we commonly refer to in the New Mexico Dream Team as the first immigration law. It's the part of the Constitution that was included at first that created the concept of citizenship in the United States. And back then, citizenship meant that you were a wealthy white man. So a lot more people, even women, were not, which is half of the population probably, were not considered citizens. And you did not get the same rights and the same privileges. And that concept has been expanded and contracted across history, again, to maintain and build the power of the ones that qualify in the citizenship category, or you could also call it the white category, whoever qualified as white.
They can say anything. It makes me sad, because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
I tried rationally to get over my racism for years, and I even went to workshops at the Peace Center and did all that kind of stuff. But then one day in my house, I was working in the yard. I was in my wheelchair and I couldn't see very well. And an African-American man came and helped me clean up the yard. And I felt my heart just flip. And I've never been racist since then, at least not the way I was before. And I had tried for years to reason myself out of it, because when I lived in Guatemala, people were racist and I could see it, but I couldn't see it in myself. But I did know it existed.
Yes, it's more about police violence. It's about a system that needs to be reformed, a whole system that needs to be broke down. You know, it's deeper than the police, you know. So it's more than just that, this movement is, I believe. So it's about the equal rights for Black people to be able to feel safe and free, and Black women.
In many different ways, like education and health.
Education, healthcare. We have more African American women dying of childbirth than anybody else. We have more African American women going to prison than anybody else. Our African American youth, especially females, are getting incarcerated for things such as like drinking and skipping school, you know, more than anybody else, you know, and getting sent to detention homes. You know, we got a lot of single family homes.
How do you feel about the momentum that's built up since last spring with the Floyd death?
I mean, I feel some changes coming. I don't like the violence. I wish that would stop. You know, I wish the violence would stop. I do like the momentum, because we do need change, and I think everybody sees that we need change. But the way we're going about it, I think is wrong. You know, violence is not going to get us anywhere. You know, in order for everybody to sit down and be able to talk and start working on things, it got to be some type of peace.
Trying to help the community.
Mm-hmm. So what did we learn about today that really struck y'all? What did we talk about today?
A 9-year-old got suspended for having a BB gun.
And how did that make y'all feel?
It made us feel like, dang, because they couldn't have overreact. They could have just called his parent talking about, you need to get your that little gun that your children have, or something like that, but not just like overreact, call the police and at his house. Like,
He had a gun in school?
Well, it's a little play BB gun.
And it wasn't even a BB gun. It was a hunter gun. It was
a zombie hunter gun.
Zombie hunter gun.
Yeah, but in school?
No, it's on
on
Zoom.
I think that we live in such a polarizing world right now, right? How do we have these difficult conversations? And so I think the way to have these really difficult dialogues is to be open and honest about how you feeling, right? As you're aware, a lot of these young men was like, why did this happen, right? This was uncalled for. So I believe that young people have the solutions to a lot of these issues that they're faced with. I asked several questions. What would you have done different? At the very end of our session today, I had them write, right? And what we're trying to do is get them to articulate exactly how they're feeling. If you feel this way, what evidence do you have to back up the way your statements, right? So I think it's just not about debating, but how do we get them to express themselves in a really productive way, besides going up doing something foolish.
Let's go!
Green eyes, right?
Jump up! Hey! Let's go!
Worth the word.
Jump up! That's touch!
He said two completions.
Yeah, who hit the first?
I threw it him.
But he didn't make it.
Oh, all right.
No, then I have to redo if you're not going to count it as a touchdown.
Okay, I'll give you the redo.
All right, slow it down.
Come on, y'all, let's go. Y'all get
Hey, keep
Ready,
motion.
move 42. So, what about you? Oh, I do.